I saw a post on the r/trans subreddit. All right, no need to give me your whole damn life story about the TravelGov website taking the T off LGBT on their website. Yes, that is true. Travel.state.gov has edited their website. They've done the LGB drop the T thing. Basically, they just control F, like they just like replaced all LGBTQIA plus or whatever it was before with LGB. Just drop the whole thing at this point. I mean, yeah, obviously, no one ever goes after transgender people with the intention of stopping at transgender people. You know, it's just like one step at a time, right? When's the next letter gonna go? They should get rid of B but keep the LG. I say that, you know, as a pan person, that's fine. Bisexual hate on Vosh, sad day. Yeah, tragic. But yeah, literally, they just did like a copy paste. You know, obviously, you know, this is insane. It's an attempt to like legally de-recognize trans people, to wipe them out of like existence. I don't know how effective this can be in a world where everyone's so interconnected and the existence of trans people is like extremely well known and acknowledged and you see them everywhere, you know? I don't know how effective you could expect this to be, genuinely, in terms of like erasing recognition. Now, in terms of furthering persecution, that's a different story. We don't have a good point of reference for this because the widespread acceptance of queer people in the democratic West is only a phenomena over the past like decade, basically. And 2 decades, kind of, depending on where you want to draw the lines. So we don't really have like a frame of reference for what happens when, after all that acceptance is gained, you try to like legislate it away. I don't know. What do we do now? Like and subscribe. Make sure to ring the bell to get notifications for whenever I go live or release new videos. You can donate if you have the means to do so, or if you don't have the means to do so, you know, I don't mind. Yeah, smash that like button, basically. Exactly. That's what I'm talking about, folks. What do you want from me? Yeah, it's pretty rough. Obviously, it's not going to stop here. We know that like literally right now, from that legislation out of Idaho, they are attempting to revoke gay marriage. But again, like, this might be like insufferably Fukuyama-esque of me, so I apologize if it is, but I can't help but feel like so much acceptance has been gained that it's just not gonna be possible to wipe it all away just through legislation, you know? Like, culturally, gay people have been normalized to an extreme extent over the past few decades, like an enormous extent. And I know that people have a short-term memory, and I know that people, for the most part, are like, you know, pretty like susceptible to changes of their mindset, propaganda, blah, blah, blah. But like, man, I don't know. Maybe there will be a gay underground, perhaps. Well, I think that gay people should stay public and visible, you know, as much as is possible. I just don't. I guess all I can really say is this. 20 years ago, the belief that homosexuality is an aberration that should not be allowed privileges such as marriage was the normal belief. And the main way you defended gay people was by saying they couldn't help it because they were born defective, but they couldn't help being born defective. That was literally the progressive mindset 20 years ago. Like, all of this wasn't just the reactionary, really, in 2005? Yes! Everything that I'm describing, like this wasn't just the reactionary mindset. That was just the default, that was just the normal way of thinking. And now, right now, bad as things have gotten, even in the reactionary wing of government, they can't be saying that. Oh, don't get me wrong. There are plenty of Republicans out there, especially like their influencers, who are Nazis and will say shit like that. But generally speaking, like, especially in like broadly public discourse, that's just not really something that you say. Now, maybe they're working towards that, but there are just so many gay people, it's kind of difficult to depersonalize them. The depersonalization of gay people for millennia was predicated on their large, like, invisibility, right? We talked about the truck stop example last stream, you know? Like, you keep homosexuals quiet by preventing them from realizing how many of them there are. Every gay person at the truck stop only sees the men next to them. They don't see the total group. So when the 2 cops show up and yell at them, 300 men break into the bushes. But you can't do that anymore. We all know how many gay people there are. They're absolutely everywhere. The chart? Yeah, it's important to go back to the chart. U.S. support for gay marriage, where in 2000 it was 35%, or 1999 it was 35%, and as of 2023 it was 71%. Just like a genuinely like insane, remarkable uptick in such a short time. And it's, you know, I know we're talking about trans people here, not gay people, but I still think that trans people have enjoyed enough time in the public spotlight that it's going to be difficult to pull back on the thread. You know, it's going to be difficult to pull back on the thread as much as they want to. Most people supported Roe v. Wade, but that didn't matter. Well, it didn't matter in a legislative sense, but it does matter in terms of public discontent. Okay? There is a massive difference between a country where abortion is not a right, but people are mad about it, and a country where abortion isn't a right, and there is like no ground game against that. Huge difference, you know? Like that does matter. And Republicans can win the election, but that doesn't mean they necessarily win on the issues. They can try to push on it, but, you know, they can try to legislate against the existence of trans people as much as they want. I guess we'll see how effective it is. I don't know if they're worried about public opinion at this point. Well, they should. There has never been an autocracy in all of human history that has survived overwhelming discontent from its population. It doesn't matter how powerful or wealthy you are. All wealth is built on the back of labor. All support built on the back of labor. It doesn't matter how much you already have. You can lose it in an instant if public discontent rises to a high enough point. It's why the greatest autocrats in history understood this and tried their best to spread the wealth around, keep people contented and happy. And the stupid ones, who were arrogant enough to be self-assured in their wealth and power that nothing could touch them, those are the ones who ended up filling, you know, ditches. Well, Belarus is the exception to that? Complicated. I don't see the average American rising up against Trump in any meaningful way under any circumstance. It's not that simple. It's not black and white like that. It's not like one day everyone's like, I'm going to do a revolution. Nothing works like that. Revolutions like that haven't happened in like 100 years. It's just not that time period anymore, you know? It's about like brewing discontent leading to more and more like pockets of disobedience within governance. You know, people getting less enthusiastic in their support. A huge amount of the power of an authoritarian regime is not their police state. It is the support of their most fanatic citizens, their loyalists, you know? Which is why brown shirts are usually the guys that predicate any fascist regime, right? The Nazis wouldn't have had the power to get away with a lot of the shit they did if all the population had been discontented underneath them. Don't get me wrong, a lot of people were discontented, but the fanaticism the Nazi Party commanded was what allowed them to get away with so much of the stuff they did. If people already didn't like the Nazi Party within Germany, do you think they would have tolerated the rationing, the lowered quality of food, the conscription of their young men, the conscription of their like 14 and 15-year-old boys to go send to the Soviet front? Do you think they would have tolerated like the cracking down of their rights and allowances back at home? We don't hear about a lot of that stuff because a lot of people didn't write it down because they knew if they wrote it down, what would happen? Their friend or their uncle or their aunt or their kid would see it and report them to the Gestapo, and then they would be shot. Thankfully, that's not the world we live in. That's not the society we live in. You think people like Putin do, the state will keep dissent down? I understand that you want to like front pessimism as a substitute for critical thought. I can't help you with that. Your mind is your mind. My mind is my mind. I could talk about this and like provide answers and analysis to every single like exception, every single instance as best as I can. I will say, in the case of Belarus and Russia, one of the main reasons why the discontent hasn't boiled over as much as you might expect to is because those countries have literally never known democracy. I know that sounds kind of ephemeral and like ideological, but it's true. In America, we have a pretty robust civil society. Like, America has never really been a land of the free, but compared to a place like Russia, yeah. And people have gotten used to a lot of stuff over here, a lot of privileges. Even Republicans in America don't like the idea of the police like showing up at their door unannounced and checking their things. That's just not how we do things. And you've seen examples of this, by the way. Rednecks or Trump supporters getting abrasive when they talk to cops. They're not like loyalist bootlickers when it comes to them. That's the difference, right? The Nazi fanatics, when the Gestapo showed up at their door, they were like, hello, hello. Oh, yeah. Like they were ideologically committed to subservience to the state. I don't think the average Republican thinks of themselves as subservient to the state, even though fascism does demand that, and that's what the Republican Party is pushing for. Over in Russia and Belarus, well, I'm not saying every citizen over there is subservient to the state. I will say they've come to expect a lot less. Is that fair? That the standards are lower over there? I think that's a fair thing to say. And that's not me saying they're dumb or whatever. Like, literally, in their whole society. They have no cultural memory of democracy, of freedom. Is it the same in China? Chinese citizens currently enjoy a much greater level of freedom and like robustness of choice than Russian citizens who are close enough to the apparatuses of the state to be scrutinized by it. If you're out in Siberia or whatever, maybe you can do whatever the you want because the Russian police aren't even going to bother. But if you're in Moscow, there is much more scrutiny on you than if you live in Shanghai. For the most part, the Chinese Communist Party is kind of just interested in keeping the boat afloat, you know? I'm not saying they don't go after people. They do, and they will disappear you if you're enough of a threat. But like, there's a lot more, I don't even want to say leeway. It's more like there's different priorities. They're pragmatic authoritarians. Yeah, I would say so. More so than like Russia. That's also true, Comrade Robin Hood. Yeah. Russian government is desperately burning money trying to keep its population happy in spite of the like conscriptions and stuff. Anyway, I hope everyone gets the point that I'm trying to make here. I want people to believe in the power of cultural longevity a little bit more, you know, a little more than Republicans do, if nothing else. A little more than Republicans do. We are in unprecedented territory. That is true. People often forget that Japan and Germany were able to rebuild so quickly post-World War II because they had forms of democratic governance before militarists and fascists took over. Yeah, that is true to an extent. There was like a democratic, bureaucratic apparatus to refer to in Reconstruction. There was like a base to build. The people, like, nothing is natural, right? Democracy isn't natural. If anything, authoritarianism is more natural than democracy is. Democracy, you don't just like gravitate towards it by default. You have to be like helped there. You have to be pushed there. There are material forces that kind of like set up the foundation, structure things so it's possible to do that. It doesn't just happen like out of nowhere, you know? This is one of the reasons why building democracy in the Middle East has failed over and over and over again, you know? If you go to Afghanistan, you go to like an Afghan village, you talk to them about democracy, they want meat, dude. They want meat, money, they want cattle. Like, what do you mean democracy? What does that mean to them? They're in a village in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by mountains. What do you mean? They want water. Like, what? Oh, you mean, so you're telling me that you want to implement a system where we get together and decide where a person in Kabul, with like what office they'll take, and the office means they have the ability to make this. What are you talking about? You know, like it's not materially derived. The underlying circumstances haven't been built up to that point. This is condescending. People in Russia understand democracy well enough. The state is just too oppressive to seriously consider it. I'm not saying that people in Russia don't understand what democracy is, but there's a difference between understanding it conceptually and building up the civil society, like a cultural understanding of it, a familiarity with it, an entitlement to it. And I think all people are entitled to fair governance. You know, it's not just about knowing what it is. It's about like, it's beyond knowing. Yeah, it's cultural momentum. Like, people all over the world don't like when the police show up and search their house without a warrant, right? All over the world. No one likes that. Who likes that? Nobody likes that. Maybe some people tolerate it, but nobody likes it. But only in some countries would police officers doing it potentially lead to a massive blowback. Not just institutionally, like with lawyers and with the police and everything, but also like getting so mad about it. You're like recording it. People online are freaking out over it. People are like making a big national issue of it. It goes beyond law. It's what you're entitled to. It's what you feel like, yeah, you know, it's not just what I know, it's what I expect.